Good evening or good morning if you're joining us from Asia Pacific. Thank you for joining this GSA Business Implications and Recovery webinar. I'm Jody Shelton, and I'm the CEO of the Global Semiconductor Alliance. And we want to make sure during this time that GSA remains at the forefront of providing essential business information for the semiconductor industry, even when we can't host our traditional networking events. So today we are very privileged to have Lip-Bu Tan, the chairman of Walden International, a leading venture capital firm managing cumulative capital commitments of $2.8 billion, and the managing partner of WRVI Capital, a venture capital firm focused on investing in core technology companies. Of course, everybody knows who Lip-Bu is. He's been in our industry for over 30 years and has 30 years of investment experience focusing on semiconductor components, cloud edge infrastructure, data management, and security and AI machine learning. His investments have over 200 successful exits, including more than 100 IPOs. And as you all know, Lip-Bu is also the CEO of Cadence. In this particular conversation today, he is going to be in his role at Walden. Cadence is currently in its quiet period, so we won't have any comments from the Cadence side of things. So just a little logistics here. We should run about an hour, no more than an hour today. And after we hear from Lip-Bu, we're going to open it up to Q&A. And you can either submit a question during the presentation or after the presentation, and we will see that and relay it to Lip-Bu. Or you can do a raise your hand and you can actually speak to Lip-Bu. We won't be doing video, but you can do audio and ask him the question. And if you do that, you will have to you have to unmute yourself in order to do that. So we'd love to have you participate in any way. And if for any reason during the webinar, if anything happens, my number is 214-674-5852, or you can email me during the call if that's appropriate as well. So with that, Lip-Bu, thank you for doing this for us today, and we're very excited to hear what you have to say. Give us some inspiration.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you so much for inviting me to share my view, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A also. So first of all, I think we all work from home. Hope you are safe and healthy. And I think the last 2 weeks, my wife see me more than 1 whole year, and pretty much at home. So meanwhile, there's a lot of conference calls. So I've been using Zoom and WebEx, and they are very busy with me. And so a couple of things. I just want to make a few quick remarks and brief remarks. And after that, I will be opened up for Q&A. I think most of you know that, more than 745,000 cases in the world and 35,000 people die. And then in US, it's already surpassed 100,000. It's 144,672 this morning. 2,575 people die. So it's still increasing. So it's kind of a challenging and scary moment. And so just take good care of each one of you. And so I'm going to draw a few remarks. And this remark is drawn from 3 sources. One, I belong to the Business Council. We have weekly call with the Fortune 100, about 100 CEOs. We call each other and then do a lot of back practice. So I learned a lot, and then to compare notes. And also Morgan Stanley did a very good job, inviting 80 CEO, software CEO, and we also compare notes and then share back practice. And that has been very helpful. Third one is, I have at Walden and WRV, we have about 150 portfolio companies, plus a couple of my friends at Sequoia, the Greylock and other venture firm. We're quite constantly in touch with each other and compare notes what we advise our portfolio company. So my the view is collected from all these sources, and hopefully it's helpful to you. In terms of a lot of people asking, what stage are we in and how long more we're going to go through. So I think I can kind of classify into 4 phases. The first phase is called outbreak and containment. That roughly, from the most of the CEO experience from China, Korea, and Japan, that's kind of draw that 5 to 6 weeks. And in US right now, we just finished 2 weeks. So there's 4 more weeks to go. So I think I'm glad this morning President Trump mentioned that originally he thought that going to be Easter, we can all go back to work and go to church. And now he's proposed in the end of April. And that's about right. So I think, it depends on the situation, how we control it. And hopefully it will be 5, 6 weeks and we can finish this containment phase. And then phase 2 is, we call it the recovering phase. That can take as long as 6 weeks to 3 months, depending on how things going. And then, any second wave of outbreak. So those are things that we have to be monitoring, hopefully more testing, more hospital. And I'm very glad that 2 Navy ships in New York and in Southern California, and then to help out. I think a lot of nurses and doctors are working overtime. It's very challenging. And then the third phase, I call it the normalization phase. That would be back to the last year revenue before this virus hit. And that may take 9 months, 6 to 9 months, depending on different industry. And then finally, it's returning growth. And then hopefully, it's very hard to predict. It's industry to industry, depend on which industry you're in. And then in terms of the US and the global economy, technically, we're pretty much in recessions. And I think the GDP, and all revising down. And then some of the number I look at is 0.5%. And then some of them are negative, depending on which country you're in. And more alarming is the unemployment. Unemployment is up to 3.3 million people now. Some people predict going to be 5 million or more in US. So that is kind of very worrisome. And then the other part, many of you may know, more than 50% of the population live paycheck to paycheck. And so without the paycheck, they're going to be in very serious financial stress. So something that keep that in mind, especially some of the small businesses, restaurants, and so those going to be really the hard hit. Of course, the hotel, airlines, and that need a lot of support from the government. In terms of the government policy, I think clearly the monetary policy, I think bring the interest rate down to literally 0 now. And some of them 0.25, but I think it's pretty, technically it's go down to 0. In fact, I checked the T-bill. In fact, some of the T-bill is not even available. If it's available, it's negative interest rate. So that means that you give money to the bank and actually you pay the money to keep the bank, keep your money. And then the other part is a stimulus package. Right now it's 2.2 trillion that have been approved. Depending on the situation, I think most likely will be a lot more than that. So I think we'll see how it go to continue to support the industry. Some of the really hard hit small business, restaurant, grocery, this retail store are going to be very challenging. I think a couple of things that I keep in mind, I keep very close touch and to know what's going on is the demand falling off. And so it depends on industry, what are the, demand going to be falling off would be interesting to watch. Supply chain disruptions. Not many people so lucky like Walden Qualcomm have very well prepared for it. Some of the company have some shortages in terms of supply chain. You may have 1 or 2 months extra inventory you kept, but depend how long this phases happen, and then you really have some crisis. And of course, travel, cancel meetings, and workforce disruptions. So those are the things, just keep that in mind. And I have a couple of recommendations to my portfolio company, and I love to kind of share with you. First of all, make sure that, take steps to protect the employees' safety and health. And that's the number 1 priority. And most of the company, the employees are the most valuable asset and talent that you don't want to lose. Secondly, and you need to have a cash to have a longer runway. I think, I told my company, actually the beginning of last year already starting to talk to my team, companies that recession is coming. And so that time I didn't know this virus would hit, but I said that, well, all indication recession is coming. So make sure that you need to raise some money, draw down the credit lines, and make sure that you have 15 or 16 months runway to bear through this difficult time. So I think cash is king, is very important. Secondly, you have to really work on some of the scenario planning in terms of mild, low recession to mid recession to deep recessions. And each scenario, how do you plan out whether you have enough cash to last? Then secondly, I think it's very important, it's a good discipline to tighten the expense control, so that you can extend the runway. What are absolutely must have and what are the things kind of nice to have can delay so that you have longer runway, and revisit the headcounts, and so that you don't want to over hiring people to a point later on you have to let them go. That's kind of painful. Saying that, in this downturn, also great opportunity if you are in a position, hire one of the best talents that sometimes you may not be able to hire. And now this is time to hire some of those top talents that you want to get. Monitoring your capital expenditures, make sure that you don't spend ahead of time. And then if you are the leaders in the company, it's very important to stay calm and confident, because there's a very uneasy, anxious, and high anxiety on the employee pool. Some assurance from the CEO or the leaders, it carry a long way. And then some of the CEO friend of mine, they have a daily video from the CEO, and some of them weekly, and then more check-in conference call to make sure that, assure them that, thing is doing okay. We are in a good position for doing that. And in fact, a friend of mine, Salesforce.com, Mark Benikoff, and even kind of proposed a pledge, 90 days, no layoff. And that means a lot to the employee and calm them down. And then actually to be qualified, no significant layoff. That's something that's very important. And then the other part is, over communicating. And during this period to your employees and also some of your key customers, and they like to know that you are going to continue to support them. You're going to be there to help them. And then the other part is also kind of provide guidance and training for people to work from home. That means that the business continuity and productivity is very important. So find a way to get them more productive. Even though working at home, a lot of distractions, and some companies even have providing the childcare services to help them to really focus on their work. So it's not the end of the world. And so we're going to get through it, but it's important when you come out, you become a much stronger company. And then the other part, if you're the CEO or leader, I have the dashboards and some of the leading indicator in your industry. What are you looking for? Make sure that you're really monitoring very tightly, see anything fall off, see anything slow down. And that's something that really judge your business and also look at the future. And on some of this order pattern, you can tell how do you guide properly in terms of cost control and also revenue forecast. And then in this very challenging time, quick decision making is critical. And so you don't want to be kind of reactive. You have to be very proactive, take the leadership. And this is the time to show the company what is the culture of the company, what are you driving towards, and what is the priority that you set for the company. That means a lot to the employees. And then the other part is revisiting some of your priorities, and then some of the OKR, the objective, and then measurements, and then make sure that you can recalibrating it so that people are motivated to achieve their goal. And so I think something is important. And then some of the company even have they call it the virtual happy hour. And so that's something that, you can do that so to cheer up your employees that, that's not the end of the world. We're still having fun. And even though we work hard on that. And I think Charles Darwin's quote is very good. those who survive are not the strongest or the most intelligent, but the most adaptable to change. So I think, like any good company, this kind of challenges actually is a great opportunity. When you come out, will be a much stronger company. And then people are asking how long that recovery is. Very hard to tell. And it's, I think it's just observe and learn from some of your company. They have China operation. They already went through, and they're going back 90% in some of the city already back to work. And then how do they take precautions? And then more test, measuring temperatures and some of this precaution. And then the other part is, some of my, I just happen to have my brother and sister in the doctors, medical doctor, and then pharmaceutical research. They all kind of advise me what vitamins to take, and then make sure that you have the N95 mask, and then even the 6 foot social distancing is not quite true. I think you have to be very careful. This virus, coronavirus, is airborne and is travel. And so it's very important that if you really no need to go out, try to stay at home as much as you can. And then the other part is also make sure that you're understanding the employee mental health. It can be very depressing and also a lot of anxiety. Anything to help cheering them up, I think it means a lot. And then the other part, I'm very, very excited and very hopeful. A couple of pharmaceutical company, research university, I have one investment called Berkeley Lights, and then basically identify some of the vaccines and also therapeutics medicines. They're making tremendous progress, and I wish more investment going there. And then beside the testing and also the ventilators, and I think it's important to find the vaccines. If we really want to get through and fight this battle, it's very important to have the right antibody vaccine that we can take, and then really can take care of it in the longer run. And I'm very excited. I mean, some friend of mine told me that 90 days we will have something. I said, okay, good. I'm keeping my finger crossed on that. So I think just put a footnote that I'm hopeful, and I think it's not the end of the world. We're going to get through it, and hopefully everyone will be healthy, and then will be much stronger company to go forward. So those are my remarks. I think more exciting for me is to listen and answer the Q&A. So with that, I'll pass back to Jessica in terms of open up for Q&A.
All right, Jody, would you like to start the Q&A?
I think that you have the questions.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
so first question, well, I would like to first say to attendees that if they want to submit a question, they can use the Q&A icon that's typically at the bottom of their screen. So just click on that and submit your question that way. But we'll give you a few moments to enter your questions. But in the meantime, our first question is, what do you see as the long-term ripple effects of COVID-19 to the global economy? And do you believe the semiconductor industry will fare better or worse, and why?
Yeah, good question. And I think no one has the crystal ball how long it's going to be. We're all hopeful. Some of this prediction, people have the experience from China operation that 6 weeks, for this containment, recovering take 1 or 3 months, and then recovering longer term. It really depends on what industry, and some industry are going through a very challenging time. Need government support like airline, hotel. Some others may be faster. I think from the Starbucks, experience, even though it's opened up, 95% of the store open in China, they predict take about 9 months to 12 months to back to normal. And so I think it's really the demand and drop off and how to rebuild back. And then in terms of a longer term impact, I think the global industry is very vibrant, and I'm very confident it will come back. I think the question mark is whether it's a V-shaped recovering or U-shaped recovering. And so I think nobody know. Even the best economists don't know that. So I think to answer your question, the impact will be hopefully not too long. And then in terms of semiconductor, I think I'm bullish. In terms of the best company some of my best customers actually didn't slow down at all. A lot of innovation, a lot of research. Actually, some of the companies are tripled down on R&D, and they want to be coming out the strongest. And then they also heavily recruiting the top talent. So that's why I kind of encouraging you, don't take it as kind of the end of the world, very depressed. I think it's more, what can you do when you come out? We can be a much stronger company and with a lot of suite of new product can come out. So I think I'm hopeful. I think semiconductors should be good.
Okay, next question. Speaking of supply chain disruption, can you please comment on COVID-19's impact on EDA industry?
Yes, I think, in general for enterprise software, because, its revenue model is very different, kind of recurring revenue model. And so you won't see the impact short term, but you will see the impact if the demand drop off. And then you can see the impact and, later part of this year and next year. And that's where I pay attention to. So I think, in terms of EDA, even people are working at home, they still need our EDA tool to design products. I think the more impact to us, it's a hardware emulation. You need to install, and depend on the company are open, the people work from home, are they ready to go back to work so that we can install the hardware. Same thing with IP. You really have to do the labs testing before it become a truly proven IP that customer can use for productions. And so those are the things that more short-term impact. Longer-term impact, I think, is more later part of this year and next year for enterprise software in general, and EDA is part of the enterprise software.
All right, next question. There are industries that will be hurt or helped in the short term by COVID-19, but what industries might be hurt or helped in the long term?
The question is, what are the industry will be even helping this virus will help?
Yes, sorry, I can repeat the question. There are industries that will be hurt or helped in the short term by COVID-19, but what industries might be hurt or helped in the long term?
Yeah, I think the one that hurting short term, I think, is clearly the airline, the hotel management, and then clearly small businesses like restaurants, laundry place, and then a few other. I think their cash flow going to be really tight, and hopefully they will survive. Some of our favorite restaurant that you want to go to. In terms of longer term, I think typical small business and a business, some of them were folded and some will come back again and start a new one. So I think it's a very vibrant. I don't see going to be a permanent damage. In terms of short term, who are the one that really doing well? My friend Eric at Zoom is doing really well, and so even I had to complain to him. Sometimes I have a problem to get onto the Zoom, and it's a capacity constraint, and then online gaming is taking off, and I talked to the couple of CEO there, and the gaming business, they're booming, and so I think home delivery services are booming. So I think those are changing, and then the other part is some of us are taking advantage of because of this people work from home, and then there are a couple of companies are very successful. They have 100% employee work from home, and we have to learn from them how to do that, and then how to really be productive without everybody going to office. And something that over time, and we can embrace that, especially the Gen Z population. They love to work from home, flexible hours, and so something that we are learning, and then how to drive productivity even if not everybody coming to office. So I think those two are those work suite, helping company to work from home, remote site I think those companies will be booming.
All right, can you comment on the memory industry, DRAM and flash? It seems consumer side is going down, but the enterprise products are going up because of rising online activities.
Yeah, so I think the memory, clearly, I know I'm not the expert in that. I think our friend Sanjay and then the Samsung and then Hynix, Dr. Lee, they can be more appropriate to discuss on this. But overall, when I talk to them, I tell you the business is doing fine, and production is not constrained. And then, as you point out, consumer like cell phone definitely hurting, and some of the consumer product is hurting. But the enterprise side, the hyperscale, they are increasing their capacity to support the infrastructure requirement, and those are booming. And so I think again, I think it's balanced off, and I think overall it's a very healthy memory. Pricing is stable, and the demand is balancing the supply. And overall, I think it's a much healthy compared to last year.
Okay, another question is, what time frame or duration are you using as you develop and implement your COVID-19 response and recovery plan?
Yeah, good question. So as I mentioned earlier, at least from my side, we plan this outbreak and containment 6 weeks. So this kind of, at least internally, we plan that way based on the guidance from the state and government. And then in terms of the recovery, I kind of plan somewhere around 2 months, and then hopefully it will be shorter. And then in terms of the full long-term recovery to last year revenue, it will take at least 6 months, and it depends on different industry. But at least for us, we kind of really monitoring the next year, what kind of order pipeline and the backlog we can see, because our business is very different. The 80% of our business, 90% come from backlog. So you want to make sure that what is the backlog increment that will tell you the next year revenue forecast. So those are the things that I kind of my measurement, and then that's some of the key indicators that I watching, and then but it's a daily changes. So you just have to monitoring. I can't give you an exact precise number. I only can give you a range, and then this is how we operate. Kind of day by day adjustment.
Okay, next question. Do you believe that there is a risk that countries will remain closed to American business travelers until later in 2020 to make sure that we don't bring the virus back in these areas? And will this impact worldwide collaboration, which is so vital in semiconductor and electronics industries?
Yeah, I think that's a good, challenging questions. And in fact, some of the China country and Singapore and a few other Asian countries, actually, they are kind of prefer the returnee or the overseas visitor don't come, because we are the one that bring in the virus, and they are already contained. And so I think when we get through here, and then in US, we become more contained and more stable. And then some of the country, either in Europe and some other places, and may be challenging. We may not want them to come, and unless they quarantine themselves for 14 days. And because you don't want them to bring in also. So I think this is kind of, protection actually in the way is best for the community. We, kind of self-impose, the quarantine, and then make sure that, you don't spread to others. And that's why this social distancing is also very important. Even when we get back to work, like in Korea and in China, they still continue to wear masks and still continue to measure the temperature. And then they even have some kind of verification code before you can get to the building. I think that is something that we have to learn from them and see how we can, some of them we can adopt in US and apply elsewhere.
Okay, we have an attendee that has raised their hand, and so I'm going to ask that they ask the question live. Let's just see if they accept.
Hi, Jessica. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank Jody to set up this meeting, and also Lip-Bu's very comprehensive and full list guidance in this talk. And I'm Xiaoning from Alibaba. So for us, we went through last almost 3 months in this COVID-19 breakout. Currently, the offices in Hangzhou and Shanghai, Beijing are open, so 100% people can return to the office, and but they still need to measure temperature, and also there is a called health code in your phones. If it's green, then you're okay to come in. If it turns out orange, you need to quarantine for 7 days, and the red, you have to quarantine for 14 days, all based on the big data analysis. And so, and also as Lip-Bu mentioned, they all wear masks. And at the very beginning, in the late January and early February, most people have to stay at home, but basically didn't impact the design productivity because we are a fabulous design company. And some people was doing the measurement of the chip, the test chip came back. So, but interestingly, some engineers actually brought back the equipment to home to measure the test chips. So, but during the last 2 months, the gradually returning to the office by say 20%, 50% based on your health code. It's very interesting. Some people they felt very healthy, but the code is still not green. So the certification process, step by step, including in the elevator, you have to only host 4 people in one elevator. So lots of precautions were going on. But currently, most people return to the office, but they, as Lip-Bu mentioned, they all still wear masks. And there are lots of the online meetings going on. One good great opportunity was concerning, as Lip-Bu mentioned, was the travel. Still, they cannot travel, and also for the international travels, we are not allowed to travel. Currently, China won't allow non-Chinese citizens to enter China. I don't know Japan and Korea. And for some conferences like ISCA, the top computer architect conference, this morning the person told me it will be online. So it used to be thousands of people. How do we do the online part? How do we not missing the networking, the exchanging things? So these are the things I have. Hopefully we can compare notes and help each other to go through this challenging time.
Yeah, Xiaoling, thank you so much for sharing and on the experience Alibaba in China. And then I think some of the challenges in US is that this health code and also the gradual 20-40% in China that is imposed and maybe hard to implement in US, and but US may take a little bit longer in terms of containment.
Right.
Okay, we have another person raising their hand, and I'm going to allow them to talk. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, this is Charlie Janik from Arteris IP. Kind of a follow-up question, right? One of the things is there are some things you just can't do over the phone, right? And so what do you think will be the milestones that are going to allow the China, US, and EU to allow travel between the countries, and how long it's going to take? And also, today it was announced that if you go from California to Texas, you have to quarantine for 14 days. So it seems like even within the US, the travel restrictions are going to be a barrier to business. So what do you think are going to be the milestones and the timing for when these restrictions are going to be eased?
Yeah, good question. And it's hard to predict, and I don't think anyone have an answer for that. And I think, thing is actually the next 2 weeks, I think will get worse and before it get better. And so I think, as you know, New York and New Jersey and Connecticut is kind of very difficult to even travel within. And they need to really, contain it and then not spreading. I think those are all good measurements. And then same thing with, the different state, like you mentioned, California to Texas. And as you correctly point out, some of the business, it got affected, over the phone instead of face-to-face meeting. And then, so I think is a big adjustment for all of us. And then how to be productive and efficient while not able to do face-to-face meeting, or even some company, more than 10 people, they're not allowed to even have a meeting. So I think those are all good things to do, because, you try to flatten the curve, and hopefully somebody, the next 90 days will have some vaccine or some antibiotics that we all can take and then prevent that. And so answer your question, how can we travel? Don't know. I think it's all depend on that full recovery. It may be 6 months from now, and it may be, very selective way to travel. And that's why I said that airline and hotel are going to be biggest hit. And then, if the government don't support, and when all this finish, there's no airline to fly, and then there's no hotel to stay, and that will affect the business. So I think those are more fundamental issue. And then the other part of the issue I'm worried about as a person is that 60% of the population, they're going to be unemployed or out of job or challenging time. And that can be a very big social unrest. And so those are the things that I'm worried about. And so I think beside the business, I think we all have to think about, what can we do? Like some of the company, we all give charitable in terms of helping those, even within your own company. You may be surprised, some of your administrative staff, and they may not able to pay the mortgage if their spouse got laid off in any of the service industry. And that's where you have to care about them, because it will affect your employees. So those are the things I'm worried about.
Okay, you are very active in China. What, in your view, is the impact on the Chinese economy? You're very active in China. What, in your view, is the impact on the China economy that has been now that China is slowly going back to normal? Sorry, I don't know if you caught all that.
Yeah, so I think, China, as, the Xiaoling mentioned earlier, and many of the company that I know, customer of mine, they're already, 80-90% back to work. And so, in terms of factory productions, is already 90%, depend on, kind of general term, people are going back to production. So production is not an issue. Supply chain, if you are in China, is not an issue. I think the real issue is more the demand drop off. And then clearly, like February, there's not much sales for cell phone, and now starting to pick up. And then just like the Starbucks, even though 95% of the store open, but the demand still slow. I think those are the question mark. And then would that be a V-shape to turn around the economy in China? Hard to tell, and then really depend on different industry. I think automotive will be longer, consumer will be longer, and then some of the enterprise may be a fast takeoff. And then, like some mentioned earlier, networking, infrastructure, and online gaming, and they are all taking off as a V-shape. And so again, it's just different sector where different recovery period.
Okay, how do you see 5G infrastructure deployment in the USA and Europe this and next year?
Yeah, I think 5G, is very promising. And I think with, COVID impact, it will be further delayed. But eventually it still will be taking off. I mean, clearly, the direction is going for 5G. I think the real challenge, even before the, coronavirus is what is the applications. And the cutback is very expensive. Most of the carrier CEO I talked to, they all realize that, cutback is very high, but they still cannot figure out what application that can drive the demand and to justify that kind of expensive cutback. So I think my gut feeling, the 5G will take off, but will be further delayed. And then even the takeoff will be gradually, will not be overnight. That's at least I'm kind of conservative view. And I think that the key thing is the killer apps. What are the key killer apps that 5G can really take off? And everybody try to figure out, beside video.
Will the supply chain be rebalanced after COVID-19 crisis? For example, is there a trend of packaging and assembly leaving China for other Asian countries or back to the US?
So you're asking about, sorry, the question again, packaging? Maybe repeat again.
Yeah, sure. Will the supply chain be rebalanced after the COVID-2019 crisis? For example, is there a trend of packaging and assembly leaving China for other Asian countries or back to the US?
Yeah, very good question, and hard to predict. And then I still remember a couple of my portfolio company, because of US-China restriction, they moved some of the factory outside China, and then now they're hurting because China production is coming back, but some of the country they go to are still shut down. And so I think, I think Roland Chen described very well. I think you need to have a more balanced approach, and then you also need to look at the supplier and some of the raw material come from. Make sure that you're rebalancing that, and then have second source. And if you can, and then some material is kind of single source is kind of challenging. And so I think you just have to plan way of using AI, machine learning. There's a couple of companies are doing a very good job in that. And so they should be able to kind of balancing and using AI to apply to that. So I think it's kind of case by case, the industry by industry.
Okay, next question. Not all of the states are in lockdown. Only 75% of the U.S. population is supposed to be in shelter. I would believe that since the spread is inevitable, this will extend the time our economy is in shutdown. Is there a sentiment shared by CEOs, or is this a sentiment shared by CEOs, and could the industry leaders pressure governors so that we all stand still?
Yeah, a little bit choppy, the voice, but anyway, I think I get the questions. And so should we have more lockdown in the whole country? It really depends. I mean, ideally you can lock it down so that you have a shorten and flatten the curve. It's good for everybody. But sometimes, the different states have different policy, and then also depend on whether you are in the hotspot. If a hotspot, then you get all the attention. And some of the state may not be seeing that. And so I think, still, I think the government do the best they can in terms of region by region, state by state to decide that, and depend on the governor and then the people in charge to make the decision, and then the company can follow. And so I think it's just kind of depend. And if you shut down the whole thing, and it'll be faster to recover, but I think it's a trade-off. Some business you need to continue. So I think have to be mindful of people, paycheck to paychecks also.
Okay, which portions of the semiconductor supply chain could be the potential bottlenecks to the industry recovery? Are there any specific devices or tools or equipment that could be in short supply due to the COVID-19 outbreak?
Wow, that's a very good question. That should be Roland Chen, not me. But I think, hard to say. I mean, in the past, worry about some of the connector and some of the filter and some of the, rare earth material, and it's all demand and supply. And then what are the multiple of vendor? And then if the economy is not good, some of the vendor may be out of business. and then it may be a little bit more concentrated to one or two or handful of them, and then would that be some balancing? Absolutely will. So I think it really depends, and I cannot single out particular one. And then I think Roland may have a better, maybe Judy can have a second, a webinar for Roland or other supply chain guy to answer the questions.
Okay, can you hear me okay? I've changed so that you can possibly hear me better.
Yes, much better.
Great. Okay, next question. After a crisis, some companies are able to emerge stronger and even experience revenue growth while others falter. What recommendations would you give to companies to best position themselves to accomplish the former rather than the latter?
Yeah, the one that I recommend, and part of my recommendations is make sure that you have a runway to last. And then secondly, continue to hire the best talent you can get. This may be the rare opportunity to hire some best talent. And then the other part is, shine your culture of the company, that, employee will love to join you because of your very culture that you put in place. And then stay close with the customer, and because customer is your bloodlines, and then they are the one that provide the orders for you to continue in your business. And then the other part is, take good care of the employees. Their healthy is very important, and then so that they can work either remotely or eventually go back to work in the office. And then over communicating, and then lessen the anxiety, and then get people motivated to do more exciting stuff. And then this is a good time, to do acquisition. Some of the company that may not survive, and then you can provide a home for them. And so I think, those are kind of things that at least apply to my company, applying to my portfolio company. And this is a principle I have them work on.
All right, another question. What has been the most significant change in the way that you look at your business since the COVID-19 outbreak?
Yeah, a couple of things that, the one is, how to get employee to be effective working from home or their remote site. And then secondly, some of us, we have a global footprint. And then while US is shut down, and then China is working, Korea is working. And so it's kind of balancing the R&D effort. And then the other part is like India right now got shut down. And then, some of this infrastructure may not be available in India. And that's where you want to invest in the future to prevent some of things happen that way. And then the other part is, make sure that, the IT scalability, security, tighten up, and because people more working from home, and then the security is another challenge. And so how do you protect that? And so I think all in all, it help us to kind of look at business productivity in a very different way. And then some of this can be really good opportunity to adopt some new way of R&D, new way of engaging with customer, and then put more into the web for training, for helping the customer, and in solving some of the problem, and through online. And so some of those things that can be actually helping you to be more efficient and drive cost reductions, and then drive better operating margins. So I think those are the things that food for thought, and then you have to figure out, find the best way to drive productivity, after this crisis.
Okay, what should companies be doing for their communities, either financial or otherwise?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think, like in Cadence, we double down on the matching fund because, we cannot work, in the isolated vacuum. You need to support the community, be a good citizen, and also it will help, building the culture of the company that care about the community, care about the populations, and then the global effect. And then, you can imagine we are very fortunate. And then some of this virus is going to hit some of the poor countries. And they even worse situation, they are very crowded. They don't have medical service help. And so how can you be helpful to them? Like World Vision, I know that this is a very organization I support. And then and there are some other organizations that helping the community, helping the world, different part of the world. And then eventually we are all living in one global world. And then if some places hurting, it will spread into some other places. So I think you have to think about the whole total environment. And then meanwhile, I think some of the good industry is medical and healthcare. I think become very important to worry about the next the pandemic crisis. This is just the first one. Previously we have SARS, and you have multiple one, and then more may be coming. So we then need to be a little bit more mindful of the future, how we can be proactively addressed. And some of that, I think Bill Gates done a fabulous job supporting, the full time to do some of this, service, and then more going to be joining him to do that. And then that, you can see that business can be collapsed and stand still because some of this pandemic event happen, and that we don't pay attention, we are under investing.
Jessica, why don't we take, if there's one more question, and then we will wrap things up.
Okay, this is a final question. Any specific comments on the education business? What's your view on Chromebook applications, both, it says HW and SW platforms as well?
Yeah, I think education is, if I'm understanding your questions, I think the education, most of the schools are shut down, university are shut down, so pretty much all online. And it's really challenging for some of the professors. They had to, instead of talking to a classroom, not talking to a video equipment. It's not very not very motivative, not very encouraging, but you have to do it. And then meanwhile, there are some friend of mine, Anand Agawa, and then he have this EDX, providing the the education online, and they're doing fabulously well. Coursera and a few others are doing very well. So I think you're going to see more and more online education, and then even the training for some of our company, and then try to do this kind of online training for our field organization, our R&D training. And so I think that kind of wake up everyone to kind of investing in some of this online training, and then some of the web training, and that able the employees and then students to learn rather than physically to a place to learn.
Okay, Lip-Bu, thank you so much. That was very comprehensive, and really appreciate you taking the time. You're a person that people really want to see out there because you're such a great leader and so inspirational. I want to tell everyone on the call that we have 3 more webinars coming up. We have a call on Thursday morning that McKinsey is hosting with us in the middle of the storm, current situation and possible ways forward. And then we have Mark Edelstone that will join us on Friday for a call, Friday late afternoon in the US, Saturday morning for our APAC members. And then on Monday, we'll have Handel Jones discussing his outlook. He has a lot of data numbers on cell phones and 5G, I think that people will be interested in. So good luck to everyone. We miss you guys. We miss seeing everyone. I know that this is a difficult time, but we'll hopefully see each other sooner than later. Thank you. Thanks, Lip-Bu.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.